All right, the NFL Week 3. We are ready to roll here. Take 2 of the opening line report here on WagerTalk.com. Joe Ranieri in for Drew Martin. We welcome back Teddy Covers in the house, ready to roll for the all-important Week 3 here, Teddy, as we've got some very desperate 0-2 teams. We've got some very questionable 2-0 teams trying to make heads or tails of it with the market. And we'll start on Thursday night because apparently New England and the Jets drew the short straw, short week. And here we go, Aaron Rodgers versus Brissett here in a battle of AFC East teams. What are you seeing so far with the market in this one?
Yeah, so first, thank you for coming back today. Yesterday, obviously, significant technical difficulties, meaning that what happened? Our server burned down or something.
Yep.
As we were going live, all of a sudden there was a blue screen and it stayed blue. Sometimes it happens, there's a hiccup. But yesterday's show, it was a long ass hiccup, and we decided to push it back for today. So thank you for coming back. A little recap of what just happened. We saw a big underdog week and a big under week, culminating in Monday Night Football. Dogs 10-5-1 against the spread. Unders 10-5-1. The push for the dogs. Favorites was the Seahawks Patriots game that landed right on the number. So a dog week and an under week in week 2. Basically, from every report that I've seen from every bookmaker, the books did very well this past weekend. The bettors, not so much. When it comes to New England, and of course, I don't have where's my sheet? Give me a second.
The Jets, baby. The Jets.
Yeah, I got my sheet with all my numbers, and I, of course, misplaced it as I'm going on here. So give me 1 second, Joe. Let me find this sheet so I can give everyone my power rating number.
I'll set the stage. Here we go. You got it. By the way, I will let folks know that game, by the way, is on Amazon. So if you're looking for Thursday Night Football and you can't seem to find it on your television, know that Amazon Prime is kicking off with its Thursday Night Football games with 2 teams who are currently 1-1. Not terribly surprising, I guess, for the Jets. But if you guys had the Patriots at 1-1, Teddy, God bless you. You had them more than I had them here. So what are you seeing here so far with this one?
Sure. So with every game, I'm going to give you 4 lines. I'm going to give you the look-ahead line. I'm going to give you my powering number for the game. And the look-ahead line, I use the Westgate Superbook. These are bettable numbers from last week for these games, so we can see how much 1 week affected the point spread. So look-ahead line, I give you my powering number. I'll give you where the lines opened on Sunday night, and I use what I call a consensus opener. A couple hours after the books open, I take the prevailing number, and then we'll talk about where the money has moved for today. So Jets, Patriots, look-ahead line. Jets -6.5, 38.5. My powering number has the Jets -7. The market's opened 6.5, 38.5, and that's exactly where they're sitting right now. So we haven't seen a whole lot of movement from the look-ahead line to the opener to what we're seeing today. The betting market's pretty comfortable with the powering numbers for these 2 teams, at least right now. The Patriots, in a sense, they are what we thought they were. All right, this is a team that is limited in terms of their passing attack. Now, they talked a lot about this week, even in the postgame comments, about trying to get things going with the downfield passing game. And that could mean at some point they turn to Drake May, because Drake May certainly has more capacity to do that than Jacoby Brissett does. But New England so far, even though they cashed an over ticket in week number 2, this is an under team. They have no downfield passing game. All they want to do is run the football. Last week, Antonio Gibson, Ramondre Stevenson, 32 carries for 177 yards. They were 140-plus yards on the ground and didn't win, which doesn't happen very often in the NFL. But teams aren't even trying to run against this defense, and that, Charbonnet only had 14 carries last week, 38 yards, long of 9. It's a scenario where even though we think New England's a significant under team, right now, when you're throwing every down against them, that makes them less of an under team. And of course, the wide receiver is non-existent in that ballgame. Hunter Henry, 8 catches for 109 yards. The rest of the team had only 7 catches for 40 yards. So it's not like they're looking to throw downfield, which is something that Mayo talked about after the game. It is worth noting, rookie coaches on Thursday Night Football, not a good track record. Teams off an overtime loss now playing on Thursday Night Football. Also not a good track record. And, of course, anyone off an OT loss. The Rams were in that role last week. They did not play well in Arizona. We'll talk about that a little bit later. As for the Jets, look, the first turnover of the game saved their season. When Will Levis, it looked like the Titans were about to go up 14-0, and all of a sudden, the questions and the stress level on the Jets sidelines would have gotten even higher than it was. And then Levis made the stupid lateral that ended up being recovered by the Jets, and then they found a way to win the game. They basically won off of Tennessee mistakes. They had an interception. There was a roughing the passer penalty that kept the Jets on the field after Tennessee would have forced a punt that led to the Jets' first lead of the game. They scored a touchdown off that drive. They had a blocked punt, the Jets did in that ballgame for Tennessee. So it wasn't like the fundamentals were there, although Rodgers did make the plays he had to in the fourth quarter. But worth noting, and why this number is sitting at 6.5, not 7, Jets defensive injuries. Remember, Hassan Reddick never showed up. Now Jermaine Johnson, their other huge pass rusher, tore his right Achilles tendon. He's out, I believe, for the year. That could be a problem for the Jets in this one when you talk about not just winning, but winning by margin.
All right, Thursday night football there. We'll head to the first game on Sunday in the rotation, Teddy, 1 o'clock Eastern time. We have got the 2-0 Chargers off to a good start in the Jim Harbaugh era, taking on the 2-0 Steelers, who I believe, Teddy, if my numbers are correct, have scored just one offensive touchdown in 2 games. And that's where we find this hovering around the 2 mark. So break it down for us here. And by the way, I believe no travel involved with the Chargers as they stayed out east.
Yeah, less travel. They stayed in Charlotte, so they have to travel from Charlotte to Pittsburgh. But obviously much less than flying back home and flying back. And we like teams that stay back east. In particular, whether an East Coast team travels west, we like them in the second game out west. Belichick and the Patriots do that a fair bit. And the West Coast teams traveling east, the same story. When you have a team that's all of a sudden all the distractions are gone, they're back in a training camp environment, it improves team chemistry, it improves focus. We like teams that are doing what the Chargers do this week. Look ahead line here, Steelers -2, total of 37. My powering number, Steelers -1. The market's open 2.5, 36.5. We have seen a little bit of Chargers money. Now we're seeing mostly 1.5s and 2s as opposed to the 2.5s that were out there at the open. So a little bit of Chargers money. And some of that has to do with the situation with Justin Herbert. There were questions about his health. He has been upgraded to probable this morning. There was a leg injury that he suffered in that ballgame. He was limping around, but early indications are that Herbert is expected to play. Of course, if the Chargers do what they want to do, Herbert's not going to be used a whole lot. We talked about Jim Harbaugh all offseason and how he wanted to talk about, we want to run the football. We're going to line up and play smash mouth football. That's what they did last week. J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, 35 carries for 190 yards and only 20 Herbert pass attempts. The defense able to control the game the second straight week, although Carolina, not the toughest offense to defend. I mean, this defense has been dominant the first 2 weeks. They have faced 2 bad offenses. Well, they'll face a third bad offense this week in Pittsburgh. You talked about how the Steelers are in their 1 offensive touchdown this year. Don't know yet if it's going to be Justin Fields or Russell Wilson. I'm interested to see if the markets move based on Fields versus Wilson. My numbers have them even from a powering standpoint. Frankly, I think Fields probably the better of the 2 offenses. Bad offense, you're going to struggle against that Steelers D. Man, we saw it again last week. The defense is capable of taking over games. I don't know if the Chargers have a bad offense, though. Good game. I'm excited to watch this one on Sunday, and I would not be surprised at all if we see the LA Chargers continue to take money like they have early in the week.
4:53, 4:54, Teddy, 1 o'clock Eastern. How about them Bears taking on the Colts in Indy? Caleb Williams taking on Anthony Richardson. Rough go last week for both of these quarterbacks, these young quarterbacks here. Somebody's got to bounce back, right? So what do you think we got here?
Nobody has to bounce back. You can have an under here. This game could easily be a 13-10 final. It's not like anyone has to bounce back in this one. Look ahead line, Colts -2.5, 47. My powering number only has Indy -1 in this ball game. The market's basically open. Colts 1. Now we're seeing 1.5s. There's some out there. 1/1.5. Total sitting 40. What are we going to call this total? 43 / there are a couple of 43.5s out there. I'm going to call it 43 as the total right now. I can't say I love this spot for Chicago. You have opening day with the rookie QB, huge game, rally from behind to get the win. Then you have a Sunday Night Football national TV affair, and then you have a non-division road game versus an 0-2 team. It's not necessarily the most step-up spot for Chicago. And, of course, the Bears' offense still very much a work in progress. The offensive line got destroyed by the Texans this past weekend. They only gained 3.1 yards per play in that loss. Oof. And, of course, when you have one offensive touchdown in 2 weeks, you're not exactly you're lighting up the scoreboard. Though, let's give the Bears' defense some credit. 2 weeks in a row, I think they played really well. They won the game almost single-handedly against Tennessee and kept them in the game against the Texans last week. For Indy, look, they won yards per play, 6.4 to 5.7 last week, but 3 Anthony Richardson's interceptions were huge in that ballgame. Richardson was not good. And even more concerning for Indy is what the defense is doing against the run. DeForest Buckner got hurt in that ballgame, but the defense was getting gashed before Buckner limped off the field. They allowed 53 carries for 261 yards. Josh Jacobs ran wild. Malik Willis was able to win the game because he didn't have to do anything. All Green Bay had to do was just line up, hand the ball off, and grind out first downs. It worked all day long. This is a Colts defense. Again, they gave up 261 on the ground last week. They gave up 213 on the ground. Remember that game Joe Mixon had in the opener? Shane Steichen, not amused by their run defense. Quote, "We've got to get it fixed. It starts with myself. I'm the head coach, and we've got to get into the meeting room on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and get it fixed, and that's the bottom line." Easier said than done right now. Indy, a team that's struggling on both sides of the football.
We also 1 o'clock, Teddy, moving down. Houston taking on Minnesota. Where the hell was that, Sam? Oh, that's right. You had Adam Gase as a coach. I forgot about that. Sam Darnold at home. Some health concerns for Jefferson there with Minnesota. But Houston, we've seen him in a couple of games at home here, Teddy. Now we're going to see him on the road. What do we think here is going to happen?
Look ahead line, Texans -3.5, 46.5. My powering number, Houston -2. The markets basically didn't put up much. And with Justin Jefferson's injury concerns, we're seeing 2.5s on this game right now. But in terms of an opener versus the current for the Vikings, the Texans, let's call it 2.5, 45/45.5. Not a game that's seen anything get bet except for the questions about Minnesota's receiving core. And of course, the 97-yard touchdown from Darnold to Jefferson last week, that's going to affect the Vikings stats for a week or two, for sure. They gained 7.5 yards per play in that win this past week. And this isn't a 7.5 yards per play type of offense. So we may have some, what I would call misleading stats from Minnesota that are affecting the marketplace. Although the defense sacked Purdy 6 times. It really was a solid game for 2-0 Minnesota. 146 rushing yards, 6.1 yards per attempt. That was their most productive ground game in 3 years. They did it against San Francisco's defense. But Jefferson, questionable this week. Jordan Addison, their other starting wide receiver, he didn't play last week. Don't know if he's going to be able to good to go here. And Sam Darnold, yes, his stats are okay. He's okay. He's not going to be the better quarterback on the field in this ballgame. I would expect that to be the C.J. Stroud, not Sam Darnold. So for what it's worth, this line is going to move based on the receiving core injuries for Minnesota. If they're healthy, the Vikings will take money. If they're not, Houston could easily go off here at -3 or potentially higher.
We've got 2 quarterbacks. Very interesting here with the Giants heading to Cleveland. Danny Dimes taking on Deshaun Watson, who played, and the numbers weren't great, but he certainly played better in Jacksonville, which is why they won that game. And how in the hell you lose your kicker, can't kick a field goal, but you lose to a team who kicks 7 field goals, Teddy? Make it all make sense for the Giants and Danny Dimes, who averaged about 6 yards a play there. I mean, they probably should have had a better faith than they had, but what gives in this one?
Well, I mean, the Giants are a team that has found ways to lose, and they found one. They found a way to lose last weekend. Look ahead line here. Cleveland minus 6.5 total, 41. Look at these totals, by the way. 35.5 for Chargers, Steelers. 39 for Giants, Browns. 38.5, 38 for Jets, Patriots. We've got a 39.5 for Broncos, Bucks. 36.5 for Packers, Titans. We got 40 for Carolina, the Raiders. But for all this high-scoring NFL, lots of low totals this week. So anyhow, look ahead. Cleveland 6.5, 41.5. My powering numbers are Browns -7. The market's opened. I call it a split line between 6.5, 7. 6 3/4. Total 38.5. And look at the WagerTalk live odds screen. It's been Giants money from the open. Now we're seeing 6s as opposed to the 6.5s and 7s that we were seeing earlier in the week. And I mean, if you're looking for bright spots for the Giants, there's one. The defense didn't allow a touchdown in 6 red zone tries. And the offense was 3 of 3 in the red zone. We'll give them credit for that. That's where we can give the Giants credit. And, of course, Malik Neighbors had a huge game a huge game. He had 10 catches for 127 yards. That being said, the rest of the receiving core was 6 for 51. The defense, the kicker getting hurt in warm-ups had a huge impact in the game. They couldn't kick field goals. They missed extra points. They missed 2-point conversions. And with the mixed extra point, 2 missed point conversion, 2-point conversions, they ended up losing by 3, and they would have kicked field goals in other situations that they end up getting stopped. And Neighbors dropped the 4th down pass from Jones, which potentially would have won them the game. So even the bright spots weren't bright for the Giants. That being said, the markets are betting on them right here. Kevin Stefanski talking about Deshaun Watson last week. Quote, "I'm not going to say comeback performance. That's just our starting quarterback out there making plays. He's not perfect. I thought his pocket movement, making plays off schedule, was incredible. Let's not forget Deshaun Watson, 36 dropbacks, 172 net yards on those 36 dropbacks. He's not hitting anyone downfield. Amari Cooper, a non-factor last week. Is Jerry Jeudy their best receiver right now? That's not good. They went 2 of 14 on third downs. They had 13 penalties for 100 yards, and they're playing without both their starting offensive tackles and running back Nick Chubb and tight end David Njoku. So it's not like they're healthy either. I can understand, given the injury report, why Cleveland didn't hold. That's a 7-point favorite. 6, like I said, now the prevailing number.
Interesting game here, Teddy, because I'm so glad there's no recency bias in this number at all. We mentioned, Teddy, how there are some desperate 0-2 teams, and there are still some questionable 2-0 teams. I don't know if there's a question that New Orleans offense can score. They just did it back-to-back games here, and boy, score they do. Philadelphia did not score enough last night at home, got the loss. Philly was a favorite, I think, to look ahead with this one. Teddy, what are you seeing?
Philly was -3, the Westgate opener. All right. On the look-ahead line. 46.5 the total. My powering number came pick'em on this ball game. The markets opened with the Saints as small favorites, and we've seen nothing but Saints money now 2.5. There are 3s starting to pop up both here in Las Vegas and in other locales. DK's got a 3 right now. In Vegas, Circa's got a 3 right now. So the money has come for New Orleans. And remember, this was going into Sunday night. Post Sunday night, going into Monday night. Eagles were -2. Okay. So Philly's performance last night significantly affected this number. And remember, the Eagles were a minute away from winning and covering last night. So you can understand the markets move quickly in the modern era. This is an example of that. Now, look, Derek Carr had multiple downfield bombs last week. Rashid Shaheed, Chris Olave catching big plays. Kamara with a catch and run. Through 3 quarters, they averaged 9.7 yards per play. And they finished with only 7.7 because the fourth quarter was about killing clock, not moving the football. So the new Clint Kubiak offense certainly is working. Their first 6 drives against the Cowboys defense, they scored 6 touchdowns. Last week, they scored in their first 9 possessions against Carolina. So the question is, are the Saints real? I'll just say this. I'll be talking about that on Bet On It this week. The Saints will make my stock watch. I'm not convinced that, again, they've looked great. They faced Carolina, who is the worst team in the league, and Dallas, who didn't play well in that ballgame, and everything went right. You know, Carr hit all his shots early in that ballgame. When a team hits all their shots and take a team out of their game plan, they're going to look good. And they did. That being said, they got Philly coming off a loss. I don't know that Philly's great. Philly certainly has issues in their secondary. We saw it on full display down the stretch last night. Their pass rush is a real problem right now, and that could be an issue for Derek Carr and company. Based on this year's stats, the Saints should be favored by more than this. If you believe what you've seen only, you'll probably be on New Orleans.
I had a bet with Kelly that New Orleans would be your stock watch this week, Teddy. So I'm looking very forward to that on Bet On It for sure. Wednesday, guys, you can check out the latest editions of Bet On It. Both the college and NFL edition will be posted and available for you guys on Wednesday. As we're going to head to another questionable team, although this was, I believe, one of your stock watches on Bet On It, is the Tampa Bay Bucks at home, welcoming in Denver. And again, Teddy, the market, I guess, looked at what we just got from Tampa, goes to Detroit, wins. I don't know how, but they did. And Bo Nix, once again, struggles. This line has moved from the look-ahead line, has it not, towards Tampa?
Yeah, we talked about the Bucks last week on Bet On It as a potential bet on team and the stock watch. We're calling it Just the Tip. Remember, Joe? Which is a line that everyone seems to like a lot. But yes, Just the Tip. We had Tampa as a buy last week, and obviously they went on to beat the Lions in Detroit, despite a box score that said they had no business doing that. A look-ahead line here, Tampa minus 5.5, total 43. My powering number has the Bucks minus 6 against the Broncos. The market has moved to 7 on this ballgame. There are still some 6.5s out there. Let's call it 6 3/4. This is key, of course, whenever you have a split line, early in the week especially. You can take advantage of these. You like the favorite, you lay a 6.5. You want the dog, you take a 7. All you need to do is have multiple accounts, and that's why I say whatever state you live in, it's not, I bet at this book. No, I bet at all the books that I can that are legal for me in my state, and you get these free half points from situations like this where you do have a split line. All you have to do is click on one book, click on another, find the 6.5 if you want the favorite, find the 7 if you want the dog. Both numbers widely available right now. Look, Bo Nix, to say that he is what he thought, he is what we thought he was. I mean, when you're, what was he, the 5th quarterback in the first round, the 6th quarterback in the first round, in 2 weeks, he has 2 bad red zone interceptions. The one this past week was brutal. 37 dropbacks from Nix. And second straight weeks that Denver had a bizarre game plan. You have a rookie QB, ease him in. No, 37 dropbacks, only 15 rushing attempts on the running backs. It's too much for the rookie QB. Broncos defense played well against Pittsburgh, only allowed 4.3 yards per play, only 13 points. But when you're 0-3 in the red zone, you're minus 2 in turnovers, and you commit 9 penalties for 124 yards, you're not going to win a lot of games that way with a rookie QB. Cortland Sutton after the game, quote, "We can't let this train continue to roll the way that it's rolling. We have to find a way to put it back on track as quickly as we possibly can." 20 drives under Bo Nix so far. Denver has 2 field goals, 2 touchdowns, 11 punts, 3 interceptions, and 2 turnovers on down. The offense right now isn't necessarily working. Let's put it wise. Oh, by the way, Bo Nix on pace to break Peyton Manning's NFL career record with 28 interceptions as a rookie. Nix has 4 in his first 2 games. Look, the Bucks got outgained 462 to 216 last week. They were out first down 26 to 14. What happened? Well, the defense had and the defense allowed 0 sacks. The offense allowed 5. The defense had 0 sacks. The offense allowed 5, and they still won the game. So when you're outgained by 250, out first down 2-1, you give up 5 sacks, you don't get any, and you win the game. How do you do that? Real simple. Lions were in the red zone 7 times, and they scored 1 touchdown. That's the defense doing the job when it matters most. Baker Mayfield after the game, quote, "It's big for everyone on the team to stick together and get a different outcome than the last time we were here." Obviously, that was playoff revenge for Tampa in that ball game. Injuries for the Bucs that concerned Vita Vea on the defensive line. He left with a knee injury. You don't know his starter yet. They had 3 starters: the offensive tackle, Luke Godecke, defensive lineman, and a safety, Antoine Winfield, all inactive last week. So they're not fully healthy right now, and that could at least be part of the reason why we've seen Denver money early in the week.
And I tell you, if I'm not mistaken, that game you touched on it. This is a pretty high number for such a low total that's dropped under 40 now, right? So we're talking about a touchdown with 39 and a half. Do you think that the total goes up, or do you think we get under a touchdown here at some point?
So I don't see this total getting bet up. I don't see a whole lot of totals getting bet up this week between 2 offenses that, again, Tampa had 200 yards of offense last week. Denver scored 2 touchdowns on offense in 2 games. It's not like these are 2 teams that are primed to march up and down the field and put up touchdowns in bunches, and both defenses have played well. Obviously, we talked about Tampa's red zone last week and Denver allowing 4.3 yards per play. So I don't see this total getting bet up. From a side standpoint, it's not like there's any betting bandwagon for Denver right now. Rookie QBs that are struggling and hitting the highway and playing heat and humidity aren't necessarily going to attract a ton of wise guy attention. That being said, when you have a split line, I don't know where it's going to land. If it's going to land 6.5 or going to land at 7. I really don't. Right now, we're seeing both numbers available, which gives bettors an opportunity at -110.
I can hear the Wong teaser line at the book. They're lining up now here, ready to go with their Tampa tickets. All right, let's move on. We've got number 463, 464.
Just 1 second, Joe.
Go ahead.
Yeah, but I mean, the Wong teasers did not do well last year.
Yes.
And they got absolutely clobbered last week again. We've seen, certainly from a mathematical standpoint, the Wong teaser is the only teaser worth making. That being said, guys who've been betting Wong teasers have not done particularly well last year or this season. We'll see how long the enthusiasm lasts for betting these every week.
Oh, that's absurd. Just ask the ones that took Detroit. No, never mind. So let's look here at the next one, Teddy. 463, 464. I am dubbing this the Malik Willis revenge game. What do you think? Packers heading to Tennessee to take on the Titans. Teddy, we talked about some teams being maybe a little fraudulent at 2-0. But is it possible we can have an 0-2 team that might as well be 2-0 if it wasn't for their quarterback playing rugby and just not understanding the rules of the game, like not throwing it to the other team when you're falling down? Is Tennessee better than its record right now is what a lot of people seem to be asking.
Well, the market seemed to think so. Look ahead line here. Titans -1.5, 40.5. My powering number for this game was Pick'em. For what it's worth.
Ooh.
The markets opened Tennessee 2 and 37, and lo and behold, we've seen the Titans take money. 2.5. There are some 3s popping up for Tennessee right now, and certainly you talk about 0-2 teams and their level of desperation. Tennessee, is in that category. When you're 0-2, there's a hunger. There's there's something about the 0-2 teams at home in week 3. That is real, and of course the markets are paying attention to that. And I talked earlier in the show about Will Levis deciding to keep the Jets season alive with that. I mean, the decision he made with that lateral as he's getting sacked, inside the 10-yard line is unconscionable. And then he followed it up with an interception on his next drive, first play of his next drive. Levis is now 5 turnovers in 6 quarters. Or in his first 6 quarters. Tennessee had a punt blocked in that game. Second straight week they've had a punt blocked that flipped the game. Bad penalties. So Sure, the Titans have played better than their record would indicate, but there have been enough, when you have a quarterback that's making miscues and a team that's making mistakes, okay, here they have to win. And Tennessee's found a way not to win in early season game. Look, Malik Willis didn't have to do anything last week. All right, he had one completion of 20-plus yards. The touchdown pass he threw came when the defender fell down. Green Bay ran the ball on 53 of 67 snaps, and they ran for 261 yards on those 53 rushing attempts. They went 10 of 17 on third down. They had more than 40 minutes time of possession. But the run defense was still really spotty. Anthony Taylor had 100 yards on 12, or Jonathan Taylor, I should say, had more than 100 yards on 12 carries. Matt LaFleur trying to tamp down the excitement for his quarterback, quote, "I don't think you guys can appreciate or even comprehend the task that Malik Willis faced. This guy got here 3 weeks ago." Tennessee knows him well, and Tennessee has film for what he does, what he wanted to do in Green Bay last week. If the Titans can stop the run again this week like they've done each of the first 2 weeks, you can understand why they've taken the money.
Yeah. When you said, I saw the question come in, Teddy, about your look-ahead numbers, did that include Jordan Love at quarterback when you made that number?
No. Look-ahead line with Tennessee minus 1.5. That was a Malik. That was a Love is hurt number. That was a Malik.
That was a Love is hurt. Okay.
Because
there is something.
The look-ahead lines usually come out on Tuesday. So when we have injury info from last week, where Love was already out. It was already ruled. I think he was ruled out after the game by Monday. So it was a Malik Willis line. I'm trying to remember. He was announced as the starter I think it was on Tuesday. So it was absolutely a Malik
Tuesday. Willis. Yep. And of course they're still trying to sell us that maybe Jordan Love still has a chance to play. We'll have to wait and see on that one. I love that on a Tuesday. All right, Teddy, the game that has seen the most interesting movement so far, 4:00 slate here, guys, 4:00 Eastern time. We've got Carolina taking on Vegas. And of course, Carolina making the announcement that Bryce Young is headed to the bench. The Red Rifle there, Andy Dalton, is in. And 7.5, Teddy. I'm seeing 5.5 now. What makes you scratch your head about this line, if anything?
Well, it's telling us very clearly the market's like Andy Dalton more than Bryce Young.
Mm-hmm.
And there was some thought in that regard that the markets would price Dalton as the better of the two QBs, and now we've seen it. That being said, Andy Dalton wasn't bet on last year for Carolina. He averaged 6.2 yards per pass attempt. All right. And when you think of look at what his career's done. All right. He played for Cincinnati 1 year, and they're like, yeah, you guys can go at the end. Played for Dallas 1 year, yeah, you can go. Chicago 1 year, yeah, you can go. New Orleans 1 year, yeah, you can go. Carolina 1 year, oh no, we'll sign you back for another year in Carolina because we have nobody else. Andy Dalton is a long, when was the last time he was a good quarterback? Like 2015, 2016? I'm not sold on Andy Dalton being the guy. And I know that he had some success with the Saints a couple years ago. And the markets like him better. But the problem for Carolina is not just Andy Dalton. I'll leave it at that. Yeah, not close. Look at line here. Vegas, 4.5, 40.5. The market's crashed on Carolina. And by the way, this is a Bryce Young number. This is not an Andy Dalton number. My number is the Vegas 8 over the Panthers. And I would probably adjust maybe a half point down for Dalton. I wouldn't adjust a full point for him. Maybe I would. 7.5, 7, I guess, is my real powering number. And the market said the Raiders 7 at the open in this ball game, and now we're looking at 5.5. So the markets have said Dalton is worth something. Of course, Bryce Young had 69 yards on 28 dropbacks last week in a long gain of 12. That's not a passing game. They had 7 first downs in their home opener, 1 of 12 on third downs. That's not an offense. They've been outscored 73-13 this season. That's not a defense either. The issue is not just the quarterback. They were gashed on the ground. Gashed on the ground. The defense wore down. They allowed 9 of 16 on third downs, and there wasn't a single wide receiver that I saw getting separation at any point in that ballgame. Oh, they had 9 penalties for 90 yards with their rookie first-time head coach. Yes, they made the QB change. I'm not convinced that makes Carolina bet on. Of course, I don't know that the Raiders are a team you want to lay a touchdown with, especially off a very satisfying road win. They rushed 17 rushes for 27 yards and allowed 151 on the ground. They still won outright. I thought the Raiders were going to lose by double digits in that game. And then the fourth quarter rolls around. Gardner Minshew suddenly finds Davante Adams, and it's boom, boom, boom down the field. 3 straight scoring drives in that contest with the game on the line. And Max Crosby simply dominated the game on defense. And if Crosby does that and Davante Adams does that with the game on the line, the Raiders are alive to win. But winning by margin, this point spread is too, And again, my number was 7.5. The markets are at 5.5. Says I'm supposed to take the Raiders here. I'm not going to lay it with the Raiders. If it keeps going down, I might. But it's hard for me to get to the window asking the Raiders to win by more than 3 or 4 points. Though that's certainly the way I'd lean. I'm not convinced Andy Dalton turns around Carolina any more than Bryce Young was able to do.
Which is interesting that the total also, I think, made the bigger move, Teddy, right? 38 to 40.5, almost 41. So the total got pushed big time as well.
Well, the difference, of course, is Bryce Young has been checking down. Again, let me read those numbers one more time for Young. Last week, he had 69 net yards on 28 dropbacks. Okay, that's not a passing game.
No.
Dalton, in theory, is going to chuck it downfield. And one thing that like Flacco did really well last year when he came in. Fire it up, let your receivers make plays. I think Dalton has that mentality as well. And if the receivers can make plays, which we haven't seen out of Carolina at any point, but if their receivers can make plays against the Raiders secondary, that could be a recipe certainly for more points than we saw from Carolina in each of their first 2 ball games.
It's going to put Dave Canales' offense under a microscope, because what happens if it doesn't work with Andy either? I guess maybe it's not a Bryce Young problem, is it there, Coach? This should get really dumpster fire real quick in Carolina. I'm looking forward to that. Teddy, this next one, though, we are borderline dumpster fire here. Miami flying across country to Seattle. And as you can see, this line was real interesting, Teddy, because I was talking to guys that had this where maybe even Miami a couple of weeks ago would have been a favorite in Seattle on this spot here with Tua at quarterback, but not going to happen. So what do we do here with Skylar Thompson and Geno Smith?
So last week, Miami was a road favorite in Seattle. -1.5 was the look-ahead line. Of course, Tua got hurt on Thursday. The look-ahead lines came out on Tuesday. The Dolphins -1.5, total 48.5 at the look-ahead. My powering number was 5. The market's open 6. What have we seen? We've seen Miami money down to 5 at most books. There's still a couple of 5.5s out there. And obviously, from the look-ahead total, we've seen under money. Again, that total was 48.5 at the look ahead, and now Miami-Seattle is 41.5. So we've seen a touchdown adjustment from the total and a touchdown adjustment for the side from Tua to Skylar Thompson. Miami's got extra time to prepare. They were -3 in turnovers last week. They were -6 in penalties, and Tua got hurt. It was a disaster. Obviously, they had problems with the Bills. Now, it's not like Tua was connecting with anyone against Buffalo. He went 0 of 4 on passes 15 yards downfield, just 2 of 8 on passes of 10 yards downfield. Tyreek Hill, a non-factor last week in that ugly loss. The markets say it's a touchdown difference. I think Miami, in theory, could be fine with Skylar Thompson at QB. I don't know they'll be great. I don't know they're winning this game. And Thompson's not Tua. But again, when you talk about how you adjust your game plan, you've got a Seahawks team coming off an overtime affair. And Seattle's not running the football. They only had 14 handoffs to Zach Charbonnet last week. It's been all Geno. Geno had 44 pass attempts, 3 sacks, and 5 runs last week in an overtime affair. Now, Metcalf and Jackson Smith and Najee both had 100-plus yards receiving. Geno made the plays in overtime to get the win by 6. Is Seattle a win-by-margin team? Does Miami have a better game in them? I think they do than the one we just saw, especially with extra time to prepare. Early lean here is with the money. The 6s all got taken out, I think, for a good reason. I do lean Miami right now.
That's it. A backup Teddy with a ton of weapons. The book's kind of in a tough spot too, especially total wise with a game like this, right? What do you? Tyreek Hill's not going anywhere. I mean, he still has the weapons that Tua might have had there. So, and I think the total was adjusted from the look ahead pretty interesting as well, no?
Yeah. Side and total both got a significant move.
Wow. That's, it's a tough spot for the books for sure there as Miami tries to right this ship. 425, though, Teddy, in the late afternoon ones. What do we get? Can Detroit figure out what the red zone offense is all about as they head to Arizona? Another indoor game for Jared Goff. And Teddy, I believe he has just about every game this year is indoors, which is fascinating the way the schedule lined up for him. And Arizona looked, much more competent defensively than they did against Buffalo, 52.5, not lowering the total. What are we thinking here?
Look at line here, Detroit -4.5, total 52.5. My powering number was Lions -3.5. I was a little bit higher on the market on Arizona than the markets were initially, but with the Cardinals win last week and pretty dominant win against the Rams, that was a rocking chair game for the clients and I. Easy winner with Arizona in that ball game, and Detroit's loss. Now all of a sudden, the 4.5 is a 3 based on just those two games, and 3 even juiced to the under. Now look. Arizona looked great in the first quarter of their game against Buffalo. And then the rest of the game was pretty ugly. Outscored 31-3 in they got a kick return touchdown. But other than that, they were outscored 31-3. That looks better now, being that the Bills and what they did to Miami on Thursday night. All of a sudden, the Bills are being viewed in a different category. Last week, Arizona looked good, start to finish, both sides of the football. So we're starting to see some semblance of market respect for a Cardinals team that really hasn't gotten a whole lot in the last couple years. Again, when they had 489 yards of total offense, 7.9 yards per play. Kyler Murray only had 4 incomplete passes in that game, and Marvin Harrison showed up. The defense sacked Stafford 5 times, allowed only 4.7 yards per play, although much of that was LA's offense and the injuries that they have. For the Lions, we talked about earlier when we talked about Tampa. They won the yardage battle against the Bucs 463-216. More than 2-1. First downs 26-14, but they were in the red zone 7 times. They scored 1 touchdown. Jared Goff. That's ultimately the difference in the game. If we score a couple touchdowns down there, we probably win the game. I will say this: I don't trust Arizona's red zone defense nearly as much as I trust, as I trust the Lions' offense to improve. And, of course, Dan Campbell. We like Dan Campbell because he does stuff like this. He absolutely took one for the team when he talked about the error before halftime, when he screwed up with the clock management. They didn't get a field goal, and that affected how the whole game played out. They couldn't kick a field goal at the end. Quote, I asked this team to improve, and they improved, but the coach cost them the game. It's a massive error on my part. I messed up. I like coaches that do that. And certainly when you're talking about teams responding to coaches that take the blame, that could be a positive sign for Detroit in this one. Although, again, they got to win by margin, and getting Kyler Murray down when he's scrambling, that's as hard as anything there is to do in the modern NFL. When Murray's making moves in the backfield and his receivers are running open, Murray makes better plays off busted plays than any other quarterback in the league. And he extends plays as well as any quarterback in the league, and that could be a factor against this defense.
Does it feel like Arizona, Teddy's getting a lot of respect here early in this? It feel like the market's giving them...
was 4.5, and now we're looking at 3. My powering number was 3.5 on the game. So at 3, Arizona is getting respect. A ton of respect, too much respect. Well, we'll find out after this week.
Amen. That's what it's all about. All right, we've got the other 425 start is going to be 2 teams off of, it's interesting losses. Baltimore heading to Dallas, to say the least. Baltimore with Lamar Jackson. Can the offensive line protect him? And Dallas at home, can they bounce back? This is an interesting line too, Teddy, this week. What have you seen?
So look at line here was Pick'em and 47. My powering number for the game is pick'em as well. The market's basically open pick'em, and we've seen Baltimore money. I mean, not crazy Baltimore money, but Baltimore's -1 everywhere. The market's made a clear statement that the 0-2 Ravens are going to come into this game with their hair on fire. And look, I mean, watching the game, it was hard to figure out how Baltimore lost. You know, the defense had 5 sacks. Zay Flowers making plays all over the field. Derrick Henry's going to be really hard to stop in the fourth quarter in this offense. They outgained the Raiders 6.1 yards per play to 4.3. You know, 1.8 yards per play better. How'd they lose? 11 penalties for 109 yards. The Raiders only got called for 3 and 15. John Harbaugh, quote, disappointing loss, tough loss. It could have gone our way, but we didn't get the job done. We're 0-2, but it's a 17-game season. We will be defined by the next 15 games. They're 0-2 for the first time since 2015. Linebacker Roquan Smith, quote, I know the guys in the locker room and how we feel about it. Trust me, it sucks more for us than anybody else. I just know we're going to put our head down, keep going, and correct our mistakes. Baltimore is certainly a team I'm interested in. The betting markets are interested in off that 0-2 start. Dallas, well, we had some concerns about their defense coming into the season. That's why we have a season win bet on the Cowboys under their win total. And, of course, the defense forced 8 third downs all day. They allowed 5 conversions. The Saints' first punt came when they were up 41-19 with less than 10 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. The first 6 drives for the Cowboys defense, touchdown, 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 and touchdown. And, of course, I talked about earlier, the Saints averaged 9.7 yards per play through the first 3 quarters of that ballgame. Ended Dallas' 16-game home winning streak. That said, they lost 48-32 to Green Bay in the playoffs, and now they gave up 40-plus here as well, the first home game this season. Dak Prescott. It's hard to say that we're pressing, but obviously you're trying to play complementary football, and your defense is struggling to stop a group. You want to do your part and then score touchdowns and come back, and we weren't able to score touchdowns. It's a scary Cowboys offense, but they're facing a pretty good defense here, and I'll put it this way. I ain't betting against 0-2 Baltimore in game number 3. So it's Ravens or pass for this better.
I love to tell you, I've read that it was only one team since 2000 had made the playoffs. If they start 0-3, and the 2018 Texans were it out of the AFC South. But I would not want to try and be in that kind of rare company if I was the Ravens. I would try my best to try to get this game done here. It is a little bit a late game there, 4:25. The card this week is a lot of fun the way they have it broken up with the early games and the afternoon games, including the 49ers taking on the Rams, which would usually be a pretty big NFC West battle. But the injuries to the Rams here kind of make this. What are you seeing with the market here, Ted? There's a lot of injuries here for this Rams team.
There sure is. Look ahead line here, San Fran -6. Total 47.5. My powering number only came 5.5 for the 49ers in this ballgame, even with all the Rams injuries. So maybe I'm a little bit lower than the market on San Francisco is right now. But we saw 7/7.5 at the opener, and I'm seeing more 7.5s than 7s right now for San Francisco. The markets like them off a loss against. Look, the Rams are a mess. All right, and someone's got to tell me what Matthew Stafford was doing, taking hits late in the fourth quarter of a 41-10 blowout loss with backup offensive linemen in front of him. I don't get it. You know, this team's already riddled with injuries. He was sacked 5 times in that ball game. The running game didn't work. Kyron Williams, 12 for 25. Sean McVay. There's not anything positive I can take from today. Anytime something like this occurs, you got to look inward first and foremost. Didn't do nearly a good enough job. There are so many things we have to go out and look at. It was incredibly humbling 3-hour window. Matthew Stafford, quote, not the way we wanted to come out here and play. Disappointing day, no question about that. But it's not going to define us as a team or our season. We'll go back to work. Of course, maybe I didn't. That's what it is. A Cooper Kupp, I think he's going to play, and I didn't adjust for the Cooper Kupp injury. And without Cooper Kupp, it's certainly less of an offense. Puka Nacua hurt. 2 starting offensive linemen hurt. It's certainly on IR for LA. This is a banged up football team right now, and the markets are certainly paying attention to that. As for the 49ers, again, they gave up that one big pass to Jefferson, which resulted in 6 yards per play on offense and 7.5 yards per play allowed on defense. Purdy got sacked 6 times. He had 2 turnovers against Minnesota. Quote, we got the players, we got the scheme, we got what it takes. It's dropping backs and executing and getting the ball into guys' hands. Certainly a banged up Rams team and probably a focused 49ers team here. But then again, Super Bowl losers do not have a good track record against the spread the following year. And certainly San Fran showed us some of that last week.
Yeah, they're going to have to do it without Debo as well as McCaffrey, the 49ers, but certainly a game on the road that is very winnable for the 49ers given the state of the Rams. Go ahead, Teddy.
McCaffrey's not worth anything to the point spread, all right? He's worth nothing, 0. McCaffrey's worth something to the talking heads on TV, but he's not worth anything to a point spread. Make no mistake about it. His backup had a 100-yard game already this year.
Mason, yep. And what about Debo? Did you account for him at all?
Yeah, and so again, I'm sitting there with a 5.5 on this game, and the market's at 7.5, and Debo's out. So
there you go. Yep, that tells you everything you need to know about how much stock we put into them to the line. How about this Sunday night game, Teddy, with Atlanta at home, coming off the win, short week, taking on the champs, the Kansas City Chiefs, coming in. Has the market moved an awful lot since the win by Atlanta last night from the look ahead?
A little bit. I mean, look headline here was KCU 3.5, 47.5. The look headline. My number is what I moved because I had my look ahead points right before Atlanta played last night, and that was 5.5, and I downgraded it to 4.5. I gave the Falcons a rise after last night's victory. So I had 4.5, 46.5. The markets yesterday at this time before Monday Night Football were at 4.5 and 46.5. So we have seen an adjustment down to 3.5/4. Not a big adjustment. We've seen a little bit of Atlanta money. So the look headline was 3.5, but the markets had posted a 4.5 prior to Monday Night Football. That's why I don't mean to confuse anyone, but that's exactly what happened. That's the best way I can phrase it. Look, I mean, KC's finding ways to win ugly games. They didn't sniff a point spread cover against Cincinnati. Obviously, only 1 of 8 on third downs in that game. Only 4.8 yards per play. They finished -2 in turnovers, and they won the game. So I'll give them credit for that. And certainly they're running the football effectively. Only allowed 74 rushing yards and gained 149 on the ground. Mahomes got bailed out with a 4th down pass interference penalty on the game-winning drive. His quote, "That's 2 great football games we played the last 2 weeks, teams we played in the AFC Championship game." They had a championship game rematch of the 2 previous opponents. "We got to clean up the mistakes, especially on offense. It starts with me, and we'll be a better team for it." Certainly, KC in a national TV game is going to attract the public money. And I would not be surprised to see them take money here. The Falcons, we talk about home field advantage that isn't that great. Well, Atlanta's one of those squads. You mentioned the short week. That could be a factor here as well.
Interesting slate of Monday night games here. We'll call it a doubleheader, Teddy, but I believe both of these games start at the same time on Monday night. So this is going to be interesting here as both games, I think 7:30 will be the Jacksonville and the Buffalo Bills Monday night. That'll be the first one, and then followed shortly after Washington, Cincinnati. So let's start with Jacksonville, and I'll give anybody $1 in the chat room that can tell me the last time Lawrence actually won a game for Jacksonville. That'd be fantastic. Maybe you can tell me who president was, because he has been absolutely burning money with the Jacksonville Jaguars. But I don't think the Tua injury, Buffalo was beating the crap out of Dolphins even before the Tua concussion. So I don't know how much of that affected the market here, Teddy, if at all. Did it?
So let's start with this. The Jaguars beat Carolina 26-0. That was, of course, I think week 18 last year. Was that the end of this? Yeah, that was week 17. That was Carolina. Yeah. So for what it's worth, they are 1-7 straight up in their last 8 ball games. All right. So that's certainly a factor. Look headline here: Buffalo minus 4.5, total 47.5. My powering number is 6.5 for the Bills, and the markets were at 6. They moved to 5.5 for Jacksonville, and we can understand why. Let's start with Ralph Michaels' trends and angles, because that certainly stands out to me. And if I could just find the exact numbers, I don't want to misquote. Since 2015, the 2-0 team versus the 0-2 team. If the 2-0 team, like Buffalo, is home, 19-9 straight up, 10-18 against the spread. They've been significant money losers. If the 2-0 team is away, 16-5 straight up, 14-7 against the spread. So the 0-2 home dog stinks. The 2-0 home favorite hasn't been good either. So that points towards Jacksonville in this one from a longer term trend and angle perspective. Look, the Jags were pretty ugly last week. We saw, Trevor Lawrence and Doug Peterson get into it on the sideline after the game. All kinds of frustration. Doug Peterson, right now we've got to stop that nonsense we're creating for ourselves. It's not who we are. There's too much talent, I think. There's signs of it, but not consistent enough. Trevor Lawrence, how about this quote? We suck right now. Pretty shocked. We got to figure it out. We got a good group, got good players, can be a good offense, but clearly we're not. Everyone has to take accountability, look in the mirror, and fix it. Now, look, Evan Ingram getting hurt right before kickoff when he strained a hamstring didn't help their performance last week. Ingram, in theory, could be back on the field this week, and I think he'll make an impact on their passing game. And, of course, they outgained. They won the yardage battle, 5.9 yards per play versus 4.5. But too many negative plays, too many mistakes, and, of course, they allowed 3 of 3 on fourth downs in that contest. The Buffalo scored 31 points for Miami, but only had 13 first downs and 247 yards in that game. They just took advantage of Miami mistakes, which is something they can do when Miami makes as many mistakes as they did. And Jacksonville has been a mistake-prone team. Worth noting, Buffalo and their injuries on the defense. They got injuries on all 3 units: defensive line, linebacking core, and secondary. That, I believe, is a big part of the reason why we've seen Jacksonville money so far in early week betting. No surprise if we see more Jags money if that Bills injury report ends up being as bad as it looks on paper here on Tuesday.
And again, that game 7:30 on Monday Eastern time, and then 8:15 Eastern time. We will get the Cincinnati Bengals at home taking on the Washington Commanders here. Teddy, I think we've seen a little bit of Washington love in the marketplace in this one here, and another one of these 0-2, two 0-2 teams here, Teddy, Cincinnati rather, the 0-2 team trying to figure it out, but it is Zach Taylor, right? Does he ever win in the first couple of weeks of a season? Because I think it's been a little while for him, too. He just doesn't like September, apparently. But I can't imagine 0-3 is anything that wouldn't put him on the hot seat there.
Well, it's still early. We're only 2 weeks in. Look ahead line here: Cincinnati minus 6.5, total 49. My powering number came Bengals 8. The markets, there's 7.5, mostly 7.5s out there right now. Total sitting at 48, so a little bit down from the look ahead of 49. I mean, we'll give the Commanders credit for going 0-6 in the red zone and still winning a game. That's hard to do. Cade York missed 2 field goal attempts in the season opener. They signed some guy off the waiver wire, Austin Seibert, and he got 7 for 7. 35 carries, 215 rushing yards. They had a 200-200 game, 200 on the ground, 200 through the air. That's impressive. Of course, it's still Washington. They had 10 penalties. They had all kinds of pre-snap woes again and again on offense. Nick Allegretti on the offensive line. You can't have that, but with such a new team, those things will happen. We've got to cut them down. Jaden Daniels after the game, can't really complain. It wasn't the prettiest game, but a win is a win. Now, obviously, on Monday Night Football, this Washington defense is still very dicey. And Joe Burrow looked fine. in week 2. He looked way better than he did in week 1, although the stud receiving core was awful quiet. The only guy to make any noise on offense was a tight end, Mike Gesicki. Now, some of that may have been the way they were defensed. Washington cannot defend Cincinnati's receivers the way that Kansas City can. Washington doesn't have the pass rush. They don't have the cornerbacks. It's going to be ishy. And, of course, the defense for the Bengals got gashed on the ground, which could be a problem here. And, of course, that defense did get the nightmare penalty on 4th down. Zach Taylor, after the game, talking about that pass interference call that cost them the game, quote, it's one of those plays where we might benefit from that at some point this season. That's what I told the guys. So they're calling it like they see it. I thought they called a very fair game, and they saw that as a penalty. So they called a penalty. What's the coach going to say? The refs screwed us. They did. We'll see how Cincinnati bounces back in a game where they have to not just win, but win by margin. Certainly would expect the Bengals to play more like what we saw week 2 than week 1, but winning by margin in the NFL, a very different story than just winning. And Washington does have that backdoor potential, given Daniel's ability to throw downfield.
I'll say this on behalf of Cincinnati today. Good teams win. Great teams cover, Bengals. So you just keep going with your bad self, and we're good to go there. All right, Teddy, that is the list here of all the games we have coming up in week 3. I saw a couple of questions I'll rattle off to you real quick. Do want to remind everyone, if you haven't done so already, if this is the first time you're joining us here at WagerTalk TV, hit a thumbs up, hit a follow, or do something with the buttons. You guys all know exactly what you're doing there. And every Monday, this show is on. We had a little bit of a fire issue here in the studio, but everything worked out, and we'll be back again on Monday, each and every Monday at 1 o'clock Eastern time for the opening line report. Teddy, I want to know, with the Commanders, Jaden Daniels, is he the one rookie quarterback that you have seen that looks at least the most comfortable, doesn't feel like he's overwhelmed? Because I've seen moments of Kalen Williams, obviously Bo Nix. He looks to be the one guy that may just have the grasp of what's going on. They haven't asked him to do a whole lot. They haven't really taken, the chains off him just yet, but he seems to be the most comfortable at this point. Have you noticed that?
So with rookie QBs, we expect good and then bad and then good and then bad. We expect inconsistency. I'm not going to say that Jaden Daniels is bet on last week. He went 0 in the red zone, right. He was facing the Giants defense. So one thing you definitely want to do is take some of this stuff with a grain of salt, especially when QBs are playing against bad defenses like the one that Daniels faced last week.
Another interesting question I saw, I believe it was on Instagram.
Let me just add one thing to that. If I'm looking to back the rookie QB, I want him against the bad defense, not the good defense. All the rookie QBs are likely to struggle against the good defenses. And that's absolutely something we're looking for early in the season.
100% there. And anybody who watches Will Levis play and then Daniels, and you're like, oh my goodness, night and day there. It was an interesting question, Teddy, and it had something to do with common opponents as the season moves on here. How much factoring do you look at teams that play the Rams, for instance? Both these teams played this team. Both these teams played this. They had different results. How much do you factor in common opponents as the season moves on?
This much. 0. Good. This is why. All right. The team you faced, the team that somebody else faced last week, is not the exact same team in the exact same spot that you're facing this week. You can have a team in a good spot and a team in a bad spot. And it shows on the field. At the end of the year, you kind of forget that. As the season progresses, you're going to be, oh, look, this team beat San Fran. Look, Minnesota beat San Fran. Those type of things. And weird things will happen in the NFL in September. That's the other thing, is that teams will, someone will pull up an upset. So in terms of record versus common opponents, in my mind, it's not something that I take as a big factor in my handicap. Great question, but not a factor for me.
And what about those teams that you had mentioned that win the box score that week? Have you noticed that, like Detroit, for instance, like Baltimore against the Raiders? Does the market sometimes overreact early in the week because, I got to get almost 500 yards of offense. They should have won by double digits. Same thing with Baltimore. Is there any fluctuation with teams that win the box score, you think, early on?
So one of the things we look for is misleading numbers, misleading stats. Mm-hmm. That is a big part of my September handicap. And we don't see it as much after week 2. We always see or after week 1, I should say. We always see overreactions after week 2, and we always see even more overreactions after week 3. So the next couple of weeks, that's something I'm scouring for. What stats are lying that we can take advantage of that the betting markets think are real?
Awesome. And we see that usually. Do you see the most movement because of that early, Teddy, or does it progressively happen throughout the week as far as the market over or underreacting?
I mean, the powering numbers, the stats are going to affect the power ratings. The power ratings are going to affect the point spread. So it's something that absolutely is more of an early week factor than a late week factor. Late week betting is more about two things. It's about updated injury reports, and it's about, all right, we want to get this number. This is what we wanted all week. We've just been waiting for the number to get there. So that's what the late week betting is more about. Whereas early week number is much more about, let's get in front of a move. These are the stats. These are the injuries that aren't factored in enough, et cetera, et cetera.
I think my job is done here, Teddy. Outstanding stuff. Tell the fine folks what you got rolling on over at WagerTalk. And don't forget, Bet On It, guys, posted on Wednesday this week, both the college and the NFL editions. Of course, Teddy, you'll be able to get his Market Watch. Just a tip, look for it. It is maybe the greatest news segment we've ever done here on WagerTalk TV on Bet On It. So make sure you check that out. New Orleans Saints will definitely be a topic of conversation this week, Teddy. So take us out of here, my man. Always a pleasure.
Sure. Well, first I want to let you guys know there's a great offer right now if you want to get on board. College football /NFL combo season pass. There's nothing more to buy. There's no bait and switch. You take $100, get every play, take $100 off every play every day in college and the NFL through this Super Bowl. Just use promo code FBALL100 at checkout. Again, if you want to get on board with every play I release this football season, get it today. Take advantage of that offer. Again, FBALL100 at checkout for my CFL/NFL combo season pass. And that's going to wrap it. I got nothing else. Thanks for watching. We really appreciate the comments. I'll get in there later today and answer your comments. Last week I answered felt like 100 of them. But thank you guys for commenting. We really appreciate the thumbs up, and we really appreciate more than anything else, if you like this show, tell your friends. Cheers. Have a great day.